Hi students, today we are starting our next topic, that is Mendel's law of inheritance. From his experiments and observation, he formulated three laws. They are law of dominance, law of segregation or law of purity of gametes, and third one, law of independent assortment. First we will understand these laws in short, then we will understand in explanatory manner. Law of dominance, as we know, in a single trait two contrasting characteristics are there. From two characteristics, one which is expressing itself is known as dominant characteristic, and which is not able to express itself is known as recessive characteristic. This only represent law of dominance. Law of segregation. In a trait two characteristics are there, and at the time of differentiation of characteristic, gametes will segregate independently. There will be no mixing of other gamete in previous one. This is known as the law of purity of gametes. In future generation, particular gamete will be ahead with its new generation. This is known as the law of independent assortment. There will be no foundation of other gamete on previous one. Now we will start law of dominance. According to this law, if there is a cross between two organisms which are pure for any pair of contrasting characteristic, that is tall, dwarf, red, white, then the characteristic which express itself in F1 generation is called dominant, and which is suppressed is called recessive. In crossing of pure tall plant with pure dwarf plant, only tall characteristic will appear in the F1 generation. Hence, tallness is dominant on dwarfness. Now, we can see on the screen, this is the phenotype. As I told you, this is external characteristic. Genotype means genetic constitution. Now here you can see capital A, it is showing dominant characteristic. Small a, it is showing recessive characteristic. This is capital A and small a, means here both the gametes are present. That is the different thing, that they will not mix with each other. But it is also showing the dominant characteristic only. Can you understand difference between both of them, capital A and capital A small a? Now Mendel took one tall plant, that was pure tall plant, and pure dwarf plant he took, and he crossed between both of them. These are the gametes. From capital T plant, gamete will form capital T, and small t plant, gamete will form small t. He crossed both of them, and it was hybrid tall, which was the combination of both the characteristic, but there were no mingling of the characteristic in the plant. Now incomplete dominance. In Mendel's experiment, when pure homozygous tall plant, that is capital T crossed with pure homozygous dwarf plant, all the offspring of F1 generation were hybrid tall, that is capital T small t. In this no intermediate was formed, and this is known as a complete dominance. Since genes for tallness dominates over the genes of the dwarfness character is suppressed in F1 generation. It means dominant gene is completely dominant over the recessive gene. In certain cases, the dominant genes does not suppress the expression of recessive gene, and in such cases F1 plant resemble neither of the parent, but it is somewhat intermediate type, and it was known as the incomplete dominance or blended inheritance. The classical example is Mirabilis jalapa, that is 4 o'clock plant. Why it is known as 4 o'clock plant? Because it shows the way clock needle 4 o'clock it shows. Similarly, this plant is in this manner only, so it is known as 4 o'clock plant. Here, when pure red flower is crossed with pure white flower, the F1 hybrid of intermediate type, that was pink color. Now we will see, this is capital R, that is red flower variety, small r, that is white flower variety. These both were pure parents. Capital R, gamete is capital R. Small r, gamete is small r. Mendel crossed both of them, and it was in F1 generation capital R, small r, and it was clearly showing incomplete dominance, means intermediate condition, and then he crossed capital R, small r into capital R, small r, means selfing was done. As you can see, this is the sign of male, this is the sign of female, both were similar, means homozygous plant. Now capital R, small r, capital R, small r. Now when he crossed capital R, small r, again capital R, small r, and small r, small r. This is showing clearly incomplete dominance in the plant, which is showing F2 generation.